Welcome back to my video series where I'm going through all of the challenges in my book, The C Sharp Player's Guide. We're going through the final battle challenges, which are 18 challenges that form one really big challenge overall, though some of those are optional depending on which path you picked. We are on the fifth challenge, which is the fifth of the core game, and that's the one we're going to be doing today. This is dealing with damage and hit points. And this one isn't meant to like kill off characters. We're just gonna like reduce health down to 0 and then we'll stop there. So we do need to be able to have all the characters keep track of their current and their original HP. And the true programmer has got a lot more HP than skeletons do. This has some advice on exactly how to like get the data from an attack, and then it describes like how punch is guaranteed 1 damage every time it's used. Bone crunch is more, it's a weaker attack. It will either 50-50 deal 0 or 1 damage. And the attack action should actually evaluate that and then deal the damage to the target. So now it should say we get this version here about how much damage is dealt and how much HP things have. So we're now actually starting to get to something that's starting to feel game like rather than maybe just story like. But this challenge shouldn't be too bad. So let's just start working through this. And again, I'm going to start just by kind of sketching it out. Uh, our character class is the thing that needs hit points. And I think we can just do public int max HP, and this is probably fixed, but then int current HP. This needs to be settable because we do need to be able to deal damage. So let's see. I do think this should be abstract because each of these other things are gonna it's gonna depend. I kind of wonder if this one needs to be. I don't know that this needs to be abstract, but what I do think is what I want is like I want the character class to handle. Like what I want to do is we're given the max HP, and I want to just start. In fact, I think I'm going to rename this to just HP. We're going to assume here that the maybe that one doesn't need to be abstract. Let's try it without. And that it was giving me a compiler error because I was assigning a value to an abstract class in a constructor, which is a big no-no, because the actual thing in the derived classes may not be really set up yet. So, but what we're going to do here is current HP is also going to start to be initialized to HP. And then down here, we just need to do public skeleton and then call the base class like that. Call the base class with 5. And then the true programmer, we call the base class with 25. That passes down 5 HP or 25 HP to down to here to this character base class. And I think that works pretty well. We could have done it differently. We could have left these as abstract and let the other classes figure that out. one of the nice things about doing it this way, and also a justification for having an abstract class here instead of, say, an interface, is the logic. Like this thing specifically calls out, you should be able to reduce HP down to 0, but not past it. And we could, like, that's the kind of thing. So now we've got this property, current HP. We can turn this into not an auto property, but a normal property. At the time that we read the value, we don't have to do anything fancy. However, when we're setting if we're setting, yeah, when we set a value, we do want to ensure that whatever people set is, it never goes below 0. And so that's what this does here. Is this says take the maximum of 0 in that value and actually set that. So somebody passes in -5, then the maximum of 0 and -5 will be 0, and so this will get set to 0. Meanwhile, if they pass in, say, 2, the maximum of 0 and 2 will be 2, so we'll set the value that they said. We could actually go a little farther here and use this clamp method, not the byte version. I want to find the int version. Yeah, so the value, so we can pass in the actual value, and then 0 and max HP. So this will clamp whatever this is to this range. So if it's less than 0, it'll keep it at 0. If it's more than max HP, it'll go up. So that gives us that's a rather nice way to ensure we get the right, we will never go below 0 or above max HP. And we've done this in the base class, so now that'll, like, any and every character will get that implementation already just automatically, because that's just what it means to be a character. Is you have HP, but your current HP will always be between 0 and max HP. All right, so we have the ability to, like, let's see. Let's see. This, let's see, used attack on that. So now we can do something like console.writeLine target.name is now at target.current HP target.max HP. So now we have the ability to display that. The thing we haven't done is we don't have. Now we can put some stuff in here. Yeah, I'm gonna stop it here, but you can see, like, I'm not dealing any damage to anybody, but I am showing those hit point numbers. So now what we need to do here is we want to say, basically what we need is we need to figure out, like, how, like, Bone Crunch dealt 0 damage. Punch dealt 1 damage. We need to be able to figure out, like, how, like, there's the attack. That's kind of this, like, conceptual notion of an attack. Somehow we have to be able to capture the idea of, like, what happened this time, because some of these they're not the same thing every time. And as we go, we're going to add more kind of randomness. So that could be a part of these attacks. Like, we could have something that just tells us, we did this attack and this time it was 1 or this time it was 0. Like, we could just have, like, a public, we could do something like public int damage, and then this time, and then we just do something like, we'd have to make a random here somewhere. So private, Let's make it static. Sorry, my cat just jumped up and just decided to sniff everything. It's public static. Sure, read only, random. There's new random. So we could make a new random object, and then we could just do it here. Random dot next. So we could do that, and then now the damage for a specific time can be computed here. In this case, like every time we call this damage property, it's chosen randomly. We could get a different number. The book specifically says like there should be attack data that comes out of this, and the reason for that is the data that we've got that like represents like the current attack as it's happening may like there's potentially in the future more to it than just a single number for damage. Like we could deal with like damage types later and some of that stuff, and then there's other things that we're going to have later that allow that attack data to like evolve. Like somebody might have some sort of buff applied to them that makes all their damage do double damage, or some protective measure, some protective mechanism that says reduce all damage by some number of hit points or whatever it is. Like there's these things that are going to change an attack, like the data about the attack as it's happening. And so we could just do this and let it be that way. But I do think, I guess we can follow kind of what the book is hinting at, which I'll be honest, like looking at this, like the book in some of these cases is like, it's pretty opinionated about like what classes you should make. Like it calls out, you should do this attack data thing. And that's really not the only way to do it. But it's something like it's one of those things I feel like I want to try and clean up a little bit in future editions. Is it simultaneously has an opinion about like what you should do without necessarily giving you like all of the pieces to just say, okay, I'm gonna use your strategy here. So I don't know. I'm actually very happy with the 5th edition as it is. Even the 4th edition, I really feel like 4th edition finally made the book what I wish it had been from the very beginning. But 5th edition and the 5th edition just it's mostly the same. It just it updates it for C# 10 and Visual Studio 2022 and .NET 6, and there were enough changes in that totally justified that. But yeah, I'm very happy with where it is, but I'd be lying if I said I haven't seen plenty of things that I want to change about it and to make it better for future editions. So it's very much an evolving thing, and maybe by the time we get to edition 33, then I will no longer have any suggestions to make it better. But that's one of them that I just feel like the book tends to be, in some of these, especially the boss battles, it tends to be somewhat opinionated about, well, maybe you could do this. And my intent with it was to give people to not like leave people hanging, but to give people enough information that they could keep building out this honestly rather large game. But like I said, I feel like it struggles a little bit in a couple of minor places where maybe other people don't like. I'm super critical of my own work. But yeah, I feel like it's in some places it feels like it's like super opinionated about what you should do without giving you enough to like really know what to do with it. So anyway, that it is what it is. But yeah, so I do like that notion though. So maybe we do come in here and make a little. I'm gonna make a record. We haven't made any of those yet. So public record, attack data, and we're just gonna throw in a a damage here. And then so basically the same idea here. Oh, and I should, well, so we got this and we should put it here. But in this case, this punch is always a fixed one. I don't know why we started with the hard one here, but we did. In this case, this little dot 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 under here is saying you don't need the type name, and that's true. This time I'll take it off. This guy, however, needs that on the interface so we can actually call that. All right. So more complexity to attacks is what we've added in here. But it does allow us to come down here and say, all right, attack, generate some data for this specific, like this occurrence of that attack. Get me the actual numbers that came up. And then I'm going to do, so now at this point we want to say target.hp, current HP minus equals attack data dot damage, which is the only thing on there. And at this point we know that it won't drop below 0 because we added that logic in to the property. I think that should do it. Let's run this and see what it does. Let's slow that down so we can see it. So punch, the skeleton's now at 4 or 5. Skeleton used bone crunch. That time it didn't do any damage, and then a punch again, and then skeleton used bone crunch. This time it did work. So we're getting that randomness. Like half the time so far, it's dealt 1 damage. Punch is reliably 1 point of damage. This one didn't work. This time it did. It's kind of interesting that yeah, it's kind of interesting that it has been like straight up alternating. 23, 22, 21. That time it did it 2 times in a row. 20, 19, 18, 17, 17, 16. All right, so it seems like it's working. There's one thing that I did miss, and that is that it's supposed to say dealt. It's not the attack data.name. It is the attack.name. And now it'll tell us. Yeah, Bone Crunch dealt 0. Dealt 1. So I think that actually covers this challenge. Like I said, the specific, like, there are a lot of other ways you could deal with the fact that these attacks can deal a different amount of damage. For example, you could have the attack have like a minimum damage and a maximum damage, and then let this attack action pick the random number. That could have worked here. And then you don't need a whole attack data record. Like, there's other ways that it could have been done. And then you got one, I mean, it was a record type that was pretty small. There wasn't really much to that, but so it's not like we went way out of our way to make it. But there is just a little bit of that extra complexity there. And like I said, there's a lot of other ways we could have done this, but like that, the way we did do it adds, like I said, a fair bit of extra complexity here. I think it'll be okay. I'm not too worried about that in the future. I think there's some good parts to it as well. But yeah, so that's the main thing that we did here. Now our characters can actually lose HP all the way down to 0. So I think that's it for this challenge. So thanks again for following along, and I will see you guys next time.